COVID happens, their business declines a lot, 470 million in revenue in 2022. So like a 35-40% fall off in revenue. Mm-hmm. That's like that's not good. And the reason their business falls off is because they're like, look, our Smile shops are closed.
Right.
We signed these leases when we were doing in 2019, peak market, business was doing really well. We had to, you know what people didn't want to do when COVID was around? Sit a dentist chair, open up their mouth and have somebody shove something in their mouth to take photos. Cause that's the recipe for getting COVID basically at that time. So they're in trouble. They go out and raise money in 2021, $750 million they raise in debt due in 2026. And then in 2023, they've got this year in September, they're still in litigation for other reasons with Invisalign, and they lose that litigation. And there's a $63 million award awarded to Invisalign against SmileDirectClub.
And that has to be paid instantly, or how does that work?
That has to be you'll work with the court to figure out payment, because the court probably doesn't want to bankrupt you, and neither does probably neither does Invisalign.
Yeah,
because Invisalign's if you go bankrupt,
we're not getting anything.
Yeah, exactly. You owe money to everybody, so we'd rather you we're last in line. You probably have secured creditors and a bunch of other and unsecured creditors. We're last in line. And
does the court make any percentage of that settlement?
No, I love where your head is at, which is new business. I'm starting a courtroom. It's going to be Judge Nick Sharma, like Judge Judy, and you're going to be like, this person owes you this much, and I get 5%.
Do you want 95% or zero?
That's right. So anyway, now they've got $900 million in debt. Okay, and they declared bankruptcy. They owe $750 million when they raised in 2021. They're paying 15% interest rate. That money is due in 3 years. They owe $150 million on a credit facility with a 15% interest rate due in 2 years. The founders of the company loaned the business $5 million, and now they've got the $63 million judgment against them.
Damn.
So they're in trouble. And so, in their bankruptcy documents, it sort of says, what do you do when you're in trouble? So they try and raise more money. They're like, look, we don't have this kind of cash. The interest is insane. I mean, think about you have $1 billion in debt with a 15% interest rate. That means every year you've got to come up with $150 million, not to pay off your principal, but just to pay off the interest on the loans.
Just to keep getting your debt.
Yeah, that's right. Just for those debtors, not to say you're in default, I'm going to take your business.
Wow.
So they've got to come up with that $150 million plus the $63 million, plus they're still losing money.
Were these guys high when they were making these decisions?
I think, that's a great question. And I think in 2023, it's so obvious and so clear that business is this is a lot of money. And they have floating rate loans. So, 3 years ago, that interest was 10%. Now it's 15%. So the interest is worse, but even 10% is really high. But it's so, in hindsight, makes things so clear. When we think about WeWork.
Yeah.
When WeWork was everywhere, it was an insane. Everyone was like, "This is the greatest business in the history of the world." You're renting out tiny cubicles for a fortune. One of my friends is a real estate lawyer, and she represented a building, and they were trying to lease a floor to WeWork, and so they're like, "Here's our standard lease," and WeWork is like, "No, we give you our standard lease. You don't give us your standard lease. We're WeWork. We don't give a shit who you are."
Yeah.
And so now WeWork is also bankrupt. And it looks like a crazy idea to have short-term leases and you have a long-term lease. You take a lot of risk there. And so I think back then SmileDirectClub was like, look, we just went from 20 million in revenue to 750 million in revenue in 3 years. Mm-hmm. So, you think we're crazy? If we're crazy like a fox.
Yeah. I feel like also this time period, it was a lot of tech thinking. It was like, if we build, they will come. And it was like, oh, if there's demand, let's throw a bunch of resources at expanding this because there's going to be people who come.
That's right.
Whereas if you look at the Hims or the Romans of the world that survived this period, they said, oh, instead of us just expanding the one thing that we see exploding, let's go find 25 other products.
That's right.
We know that 12 of them might fail, but 13 of them are going to keep our business growing.
And the reality is, I think at some point, I would say SmileDirectClub had less, they were not very capital efficient.
Yeah.
Like, I think the Hims and Romans of the world have been more capital efficient, or certainly have gotten to be more capital efficient. And I think the music stopped at a really bad time for SmileDirectClub, where they're like, fuck, we have all this debt, we have this judgment, we don't have any cash, and our business is going in the wrong direction.